Word just in from Baghdad of an attack on Ramadan worshippers headed to a Sunni mosque in the northern part of the city. Iraqi police report 10 people killed, 11 wounded. That attack just part of the daily violence in Iraq and doesn't appear to be waning. In fact, the weekly rate of suicide attacks is the highest since the war began. In the words of the U.S. Army spokesman in Baghdad, this has been a tough week.
In terms of attacks, this week's suicide attacks were at their highest level in any given week, with half of them targeting security forces. Last week, almost 50% of the vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices were suicide attacks.
On the ground and from the air, an American-led force traded fire today with what U.S. leaders call suspected terrorists in Baquba, north of Baghdad. 4 gunmen believed linked to be al-Qaeda were killed, as were 4 female civilians. An Army spokesman says the mission was to root out a wanted terror leader. No word if the main suspect was among those killed.
12 months or less. That is how soon most Iraqis wish U.S. troops would leave their country. A University of Maryland project this month polled more than 1,100 Iraqi adults nationwide. More than 70% of them responded that they would like to see all U.S. forces withdrawn from Iraq within 6 months to a year. Now, the poll summarizes that most Iraqis believe a U.S. pullout will make their government stronger.
Today, U.S. forces killed 8 people, including 4 suspected terrorists and 4 civilian women. The military says it happened during a raid on a suspected terrorist house just northeast of Baghdad. But relatives of the dead deny the U.S. account and say the family had nothing to do with any terrorist group. So far this week, 3 Americans have died fighting in Iraq. Also today, gunmen opened fire on worshippers heading to a Sunni mosque in Baghdad. 10 people died, 11 wounded. At least 8 died in car bombs. And in the last 24 hours alone, police have found 17 bodies, all tortured throughout Baghdad. It is adding up to an exceptionally violent week in Iraq.
This has been a tough week. Over the past 2 weeks, we have seen a rise in the number of attacks, especially in Baghdad.
The top military spokesman in Iraq saying suicide attacks are at their highest level ever this week. Let's get the very latest on the situation from Iraq tonight with Michael Ware. He reports from Baghdad. So, Michael, why the increase in these attacks?
Well, Paula, welcome to the business of war in Iraq. I mean, this is not far off the general grind of attacks and the letting of blood that we've been seeing for well over a year now. And why the spike right now? Well, welcome to the holy month of Ramadan. This is the 4th Ramadan offensive by the insurgents. We expected this. The military flagged it early on, and here it is. This is a sign that the insurgency, the militias and al-Qaeda, which sends these suicide bombings, are all out there and thriving. Paula?
Do Iraqi citizens tell you, Michael, they have any confidence that this new government can do anything about this?
No, not at all. I mean, even American officials offline will openly admit to you that the Prime Minister has no power whatsoever. In fact, they see that as one of the appeals of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. He doesn't really have the full backing of any of the major power blocks or the parties or the militias more particularly. So they see him as clay with which they can work. The trick is giving him power, finding it for him. That's what this Battle of Baghdad is really all about. Secure the city and try and develop a popular support base for him. But when you talk to Iraqis, and as this poll shows, no one feels secure. And most people just want the Americans to leave, Paula.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the specific poll, because it just came out. It was released from University of Maryland and basically shows that 70% of all Iraqis want all U.S. forces out within a year. Is that what you hear on the street?
It's what I've been hearing for 3.5 years, Paula. I mean, in the early days, in the immediate backwash of the invasion, people were sort of, okay, well, you remove Saddam, you remove that regime. This is Sunni and Shia. The next thing was, well, thank you for that. When are you leaving? And then the troops didn't. It turned into the occupation. Iraqis refer to the Americans as the occupiers. They are, as to their mind, under a state of occupation, and they don't like it. Middle Iraq, gave the American forces a window of opportunity as an extension of good faith. All right, you said you're here to deliver progress and development, so let's see it. I'll give you a year. Okay, I gave you 2. I gave you 3. Well, now I can't even leave my house. I can't send my kids to school. This isn't working, Paula.
Michael Ware, thanks so much for the update. Appreciate it. We're going to get back to it.
Billions more for military operations. The House of Representatives has approved another $70 billion for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's part of a record $448 billion Pentagon budget. The Senate is expected to give its approval this week. Iraq alone has been costing about $8 billion a month. That means more money will have to be set aside in the spring.